I think you need to be at least a bit OCD. Yes, that's something that comes with the job.
Okay.
It's I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but
Okay.
but it's
Pretty big.
It's pretty big. Yes, it will be a more hardcore game.
Vi är spelskaparna.
Welcome to Spelskaparna, Juha.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here, and you have worked with a lot of different gaming companies, Rovio and now Remedy, for instance.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a lot about that. My first question to you is, what was the first game that you ever made?
Dabbling with Spectra Video 3 to 8, some shooter game, perhaps when I was 10 years old, but if you don't count that, then it probably was the games project at the Helsinki University of Technology where we made the multiplayer dungeon crawling mobile game with Palm OS, Java, and connection to your mobile phone and server in a small box.
So quite a niche
Very
console.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that? Do you remember?
It was a client project, so it was we were students, but it was a course in a programming, but we chose a game project, and we had an actual client from the business world who was driving this as a proof of concept.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the specs were given to us.
Okay, got it. And like a multi-user dungeon, was it text-based then, or what
No,
was
it
the
was
case?
like sprite-based graphics. So really simple, but it did work. We could have multiple people playing in the game.
Okay. But I guess you didn't get that many users with that kind of setup.
No, it was back in 2001, and like mobile wasn't a thing back then.
Too ahead of your time.
Too much.
Yeah. But what was the first game project that you worked on that really got a huge success?
I think that would have been Angry Birds Star Wars.
Okay.
That was, I think, by today's standards, a huge success, but wasn't good enough for Rovio back in the day. So
okay.
Angry Birds that was released, like, was it 2 or 3 years earlier? They had 100 million daily players, and when Star Wars had it was less than 10 million, which is a good number, but wasn't comparable to the original Angry Birds, so it wasn't good enough.
Oh, okay, wow. Because, I mean, you can't compare almost anything with the original Angry Birds. I mean,
Yes,
it's one of a kind in one sense. So.
Something that Rovio learned, but a bit later.
Okay. So what was the state of Rovio when you entered the company?
It was, I think, the height of the everything, so it was very, very good. I think what was a bit problematic was that everything was Angry Birds at that time, even though Angry Birds was already a couple of years old. So the vibe outside was to see what's next for Rovio, but inside Rovio there wasn't such a sort of big drive to think what's next when there's still stuff to do on Angry Birds. So that was something I did a lot within the company to try to figure out what would be the next Angry Birds that isn't Angry Birds. And we
gameplay or IP?
IP wise. So, and also gameplay wise, slingshot games you can only do so much with that mechanic, but both we tried to dabble into other IPs and other type of games, mostly mid-core type of games paved by Supercell with Clash of Clans. We tried something similar, but then at some
because
point,
Supercell was around at this time as well.
yeah. Supercell, I think when I joined Rovio, Supercell had already launched Clash of Clans 2012, I think, during the summer, and it was already a huge success. So we were trying to figure out something similar.
Okay.
But didn't happen.
Okay, but what kind of it's quite interesting to hear. Why do you think it didn't happen, and what did the organization do to try to find the next big thing?
The organization did quite little. We had this studio focusing on the new stuff. Why it didn't happen is that making games is quite hard. You need to hit certain goals that are very abstract, like gameplay is fun. You don't want to do exactly the same game that someone else has done, but if you don't, then you need to figure out all sorts of nasty questions like what is fun
Yeah.
and how do you find the fun. And we had the Rovio Stars publishing part, and we had the Plunder Pirates game, which was a builder battler type of game. It was never as successful as Clash of Clans, but it had huge potential. It had like way higher artistic quality, like graphics quality on it than Clash of Clans, but the gameplay, the players just didn't take on it as much as Clash of Clans. So
Okay.
it's a black magic thing sometimes.
Yeah, I mean it's so much uncertainty involved in creating a game that is fun.
Yes.
It's it's very tricky. Like knowing today, is there something you would have wanted to done differently back then to maybe find this next big thing?
I don't know myself, but what I wished from the management at the time was that we could put more effort into that. Instead, 2014, they refocused on Angry Birds, and they pretty much canceled everything else that were like different IPs, almost all of them. From my standpoint, it wasn't the right call. I don't think they think it was the wrong call either. So there was stuff in Angry Birds that they felt like they could milk, and the Angry Birds movie was coming out. But we had a few hundred people in the game studios altogether, so I felt that you can still do Angry Birds, but you'd be better off if you also did something else, or like fast iteration, trying to find the next big thing.
Yeah. And do you think that there was something that was promising from all of the games that were cancelled at that time?
I think there were a few that showed promise. It's difficult from the management perspective to see if it's something that shows promise, if it actually will be a thing or not. So it wasn't a bad call as such to cancel them, but the whole strategy change to move back to Angry Birds, I didn't agree with that.
No.
But there were actually a couple of games that could have been big, but they were also bigger games, so that they would have required more investment in like people-wise, so that they could be fleshed out.
Yeah. But if we talk about some positive stuff, what do you remember from your time at Rovio that worked really well and that was like positive in hindsight?
Well, the atmosphere was really good, and people working on a dozen different game projects, and all in a very positive spirit, driven forward. The studio structure that we had was also pretty good. That there were specialized studios, like one for women type of games, one for the old school Angry Birds games. Then there was the mid-core type of game studio, and then I think afterwards it wasn't established when I was there, but they had this even harder core game studio in London. So that I think that structure was very good.
In one studio, what type of persons did you have?
There was the head of the studio, and then regular game teams that were, I think, around 10 people each, like 2 to 3 game teams within a studio. And it was the pretty standard setup, so designers, coders, artists, and depending on the game project, it varied a bit how many. But
And your role was this time?
I was producer, so yeah, in the game team there was also a producer or two each. So I was in the new IP game studio working as an EP of 2 of the projects that were cancelled, and I don't want to sound bitter, but yeah, they had promise, I would say.
Oh, okay. And was it around this time that you moved on to other adventures?
Yes, it was with one of the teams from Rovio. The project that was cancelled, we founded our own little mobile studio and worked on something, a game that was later on released as Starside Arena. Sort of our thinking was that we didn't believe the strategy change to Angry Birds. We've seen Angry Birds already, so why wouldn't we try something that we believe in? And then it was at that time it seemed fairly straightforward to have your own studio, and at that time it seemed like it's a good merit to come from Rovio and have that studio, so that there would be investors lining up to give their money to us, but it didn't happen that way.
Okay. But how did you handle it? Like, did you use your own savings, or what was the deal?
Yeah, most of us put some money in, and there was Sisu Game Ventures, which was this. Their model was to give a bit of seed money to many companies and then see what comes out of them. So we got there funded by them, and then from Tekes, which is the Finnish high-tech fund, they fund tech projects. So we applied from them some money and got it. So we pretty much had a funding for 1 year, and that we saw that it's enough to make the game and see if it flies.
Okay. And how was that, like the process of building up a new company? And did you keep the Rovio culture, or did you create your own, or how did that develop?
I think we created our own culture, but it was a very small. We were 5 people, and we were in the same room. So it's sort of we didn't intentionally keep up any culture. It was how it became. So
that's very close. Then I mean, it's
yes.
It takes a lot to be that close and work together.
Yep, especially in the very uncertain atmosphere of a startup.
And you were a producer for this game as well?
Yeah, I was pretty much. We had the lead designer 2 coders and an artist, and I did everything else. I was the CEO and producer and the general handyman.
Looking back, what was most challenging for you at that time?
I think trying to find the additional funding was, I totally underestimated the difficulty. As I said, I thought that people would be lining to give the money, but no, it was definitely. I think making the game went relatively easy from a production perspective. We got it out on time, but then when it didn't get enough players, which we pretty much knew that it wouldn't if we don't get any funding to
marketing.
Marketing, yes. So, I would say that was the challenging part.
And why do you think it was so hard to get the funding?
One part of it was that we underestimated it.
Okay.
So we started trying to find out or trying to get the investors. We started the process too late, and we had this. Well, basically, I had this idea that when we have something to show, actual game in soft launch, it would be convincing to the investors. But even though the metrics were good, we didn't get enough players so that you could actually validate the metrics that would it scale up with, let's say, 1 million players. So the investors kept saying that, it's looking good, but you need more players. And we couldn't get more players because we didn't have the money. So at soft launch, they said that, we'll wait until it's like fully globally launched. And at global launch, it was pretty much too late.
Oh, okay.
So,
was it a tricky decision to decide that, okay, we can't continue this anymore?
It wasn't a decision as such. Few people left the company because they couldn't sustain not being paid, but we had the company up and running on the side for a while, and we actually got the publisher HeroCraft from Russia, who agreed to publish the game, and it looked good for a while, but not good enough. So when we went down, we sold all the rights to the game to the publisher, and the game is now out and making money, but it was too late for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's sort of sad that we missed the opportunity, but also somehow feeling good that we made a game that's actually making profit, even if it's for someone else.
Yeah, so I mean, it's proof that you were working on the right things, but I mean, timing and luck is always a part of any success. So
yeah,
so it's just a bit. But I mean, it's never fun to realize that. But.
Yes.
You were the CEO, but you were also a producer, and you were a producer at Rovio as well. What qualifications do you think is part of a good producer?
I think you need to be at least a bit OCD. You need to care about things that other people don't care about. You need to love Excel sheets and schedules and planning around those. I think those are very important, and also you need to keep cool, because when situations arise, you can't be the first one to panic. You need to calm the others down.
When did you realize that this was a position that would fit you?
I did quite a bit of project management at Nokia, so I knew that I had the qualities back then, and then producer isn't that different from project manager, so it was just leading the creative side as well into the mix. So the qualifications are pretty much the same.
Okay. And what type of products did you or projects did you manage at Nokia?
We had this tech strike team called the Triage team. We were. It's a bit technical, but we went. We were. There was this Symbian OS that was used in the Nokia smartphones, and Symbian was made by Symbian Ltd at that time. So we were in the interface of Nokia and Symbian to analyze all the bugs that were reported at Nokia that were thought that might be in the actual OS and not in the Nokia code. So we had this strike team, and I was leading that project and supervision wise later on.
And what is the situation? Because I haven't seen like figures or charts of this, but I've heard that like a lot of the huge mobile game success that is in Finland today, that many of the people comes from Nokia. Is that true?
I don't have any facts, but I know many Nokia people who are in the games industry at the moment. So what I know that most of the new I can't say most, but a huge number of the new startups that we've had are ex-Nokia people, because there were like 60,000 people in Nokia early 2010 maybe, and when that went down, many people started their own tech startups from that number. And
yeah, so not only games, but
not only games, but definitely also games.
Do you think, and for you as well, you said that earlier, that being a producer and a project manager wasn't that big a difference really, but has it been challenging for ex-Nokia people to adapt to the gaming industry?
I think it has. There was a bit of a eye-opening discussion with a headhunter, maybe 2012, where I had experience prior to Nokia. So we were talking with the headhunter about one position, and he bluntly told me that if I only had Nokia experience, he wouldn't be talking to me, because there are so many Nokia engineers out there that don't have any experience on how world outside Nokia is working. So that was a bit scary to me, but yeah, I think most people have found their place, even those Nokia engineers.
Yeah, I guess that's always tricky when you have only seen one thing or one company.
Yeah, and Nokia had such a strong culture, so it was. I can see it being a bit difficult to adapt to another working culture when you're coming from, like, there were people who had 15 years of experience at Nokia, then moving to something else, there might be some adjustment to do.
Yeah. But like culture-wise, what would you say is the biggest difference if we take Rovio and Nokia, for instance?
That's a good question. I think all the game companies that I've been involved with, it's more homogenic in that everyone loves games in those companies. Working at Nokia, it's not like everything revolves around mobile phones. People have their hobbies and stuff, and they are totally different from the work. But in a gaming company, it intertwines in a very special way. Of course, it was more, I like the word, happier atmosphere, like more creative, and also facilitating that creativeness, rather than in Nokia that was more industrialized, if you could say that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being a difference. But let's get into Remedy. How did you end up there?
I applied there a few times. Timing wasn't right on those goals. But then I still had Epic Owl when I first applied to Remedy, but then they didn't need my services as a producer. Then I applied second time and still no. But then they called me the third time, and they needed a gameplay producer for Control, and that's how I got in. And it's pretty interesting because I was a gameplay producer for I think 2 months, and then became the lead producer when it was originally, or when I joined, it was set up so that the game director had both of those hats. He had the producer hat and the creative hat, and it was figured around that time that it's too much. Someone needs to take the actual production hat from him, and then I just gotten in, and I guess someone saw some potential in my work, and I got the lead producer hat.
Okay, that's quick.
And that was very quick.
What did your responsibilities consist of at that time?
At first, it was just a gameplay team that was maybe 15 people, but then I took the lead producer hat, and it was pretty much the schedule, the scope, the budget, the staffing of the whole project, and seeing it from now on until finishing, and finish on time, on schedule, and in budget. That was, in short, the responsibility area.
Okay. And was it big difference to work on a AAA company this time around?
Yeah, it's huge, because the number of people you need to make sure that are focusing on right things, it's totally different. You can't, in a small, less than 10 people, a 10 people team, you can actually know what everyone is doing. But here you need to give more trust, but also make sure that people communicate much more than in a small team where it's more or less natural for them to communicate.
Okay. What kind of processes do you have to spread the knowledge throughout the entire team?
We have teams pretty much use their own processes, what fits them the best. But then we have these more agile strike teams, for instance, for different aspects of the game, usually gameplay-driven stuff. Like, let's say in Control, you have different enemies. So we have the enemies strike team that has multiple different disciplines working on the enemies, and they have their own schedule and own weekly process that they adhere to. But then of the more abstract things, they are pretty much done team by team. Like the cinematics are done by the cinematics team with the cinematics pipeline, and it's a bit separate process.
Okay. And what is the reason for the enemies team to be this kind of strike team?
There are multiple disciplines that are working on the same thing, so the communication is much more efficient. And if they would do that separately, there might be an animator who is animating a totally different thing that a gameplay designer is designing, and then when they meet at some point, they wouldn't fit. But since they are now on the same team with the own schedule, own cycle, own review process at all times, then it's much more smoother and faster.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Usually you can work inside one team and you don't really have to know about what other teams are doing.
Yeah.
But in what way and how often are you syncing between the teams?
Me and the game director have this weekly review round. Every Friday we go and talk to every team, and then via that we can usually spot if there is an extra need for a meeting or something, and then arrange it specifically. There are multiple aspects, but we don't have this huge sync where every team is present that we talk about the design issues, but we have a weekly kickoff for the whole team, whole control team, that we bring out any pressing issues with the team and topics that we need to discuss about. But other than that, it's more like precision syncing. And of course, when, let's say, a game designer needs some feedback on something, he just goes and asks for it from another team, and it's quite free in that respect.
Oh, yeah. And how big is the entire team?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but,
Okay.
but it's
Pretty big.
It's pretty big.
But they can fit in one room.
No.
Okay, interesting. So these kickoffs are digital, or
No, they are physical. We have this big room. Yeah, their workspace is they can fit in our auditorium. Yes, for the kickoff.
Okay.
Yes.
You have an auditorium.
Yeah.
Interesting. And as a producer, I think like for any not only game project but even software project, estimation is so difficult.
It is.
And how do you cope with that?
We just need to take into account that it is difficult. It will be off, and it will be iterative. So we don't estimate things now and expect that the estimations remain the same 2 months from now. We reiterate on the estimates at all times. Sometimes things are done quicker, but that's rarer than things taking more time. So we put buffers in the estimates and re-estimate when we accumulate more information on how long it actually is taking.
Okay. Do you have a release date now for Control?
Yes,
And
but it's not public.
Okay, it's not public. And so for you, how do you handle that issue? Because the game is not done yet.
Yes.
And you have the date. So then you somehow need to decide, like, there is a date for when it's going to be done. How do you handle that situation?
We have multiple different plans on different aspects of the game, like the levels, the art, the gameplay, and they are all focusing on the same date. So we do according to the plan, but we prioritize heavily on the stuff that we actually need to polish very diamond-like. I'm talking about diamonds and good enough. So what will be the diamond of the game and what isn't enough that it's good enough. So we don't need to polish. So prioritization, I would say, is the key thing in having that date there and having this work to do.
And I guess there is one release date, and then there is one date when the golden master is supposed to be finished or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the date that you're internally using, or?
Yes. Yeah. We are not saying to the team that this is the date and the date is actually 2 months later. We are very honest about the date that when things need to be done.
Okay, yeah, get it. Yeah, I guess this is a good opportunity to actually ask you, what is Control? What kind of game is that?
It's a AAA third-person action-adventure shooter with a supernatural twist, with our first female lead and our first sandbox type of environment, not linear storytelling, but you can do main missions and side missions, and that's pretty much in a nutshell.
And from the trailer that I've seen, it really looks like if you are a fan of of the Remedy games, the games Remedy have done before, this is like right up their alley.
Yes. It will be a more hardcore game in gameplay-wise than the earlier ones. But definitely the atmosphere is going to be very weird. I can promise.
Hardcore in what sense?
There are decisions on gameplay, like in a casual game you die, it doesn't matter that much, but in our game it does matter if you die.
Oh, okay, interesting.
But I can't comment more, so...
Yeah, we'll have to wait. But when you got on board Remedy, work had already started on Control.
Yeah.
But do you know about the process that went on before that? I mean, if we compare to Rovio, I mean, there must have been at some point like finding out what are we doing next, what kind of game is it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was pretty much done with a small strike team again, finding out, prototyping, and figuring out the underlying story. As always in our I'm not sure always, but very often, Sam Lake is the one who comes up with the idea for the story, and then it unwinds from there.
Is that something that is always ongoing on Remedy, that there is a strike team trying to prototype what's going to be after Control, for instance?
No, it's actually a rather new thing. Up until Quantum Break, Remedy did one project at a time, so it was always the project, and then when it shipped, the next one was ramped up. Now it's changed, but we are not scaling it up into, like, we have multi-project organization, but there is a limit to that. So we have a project that is ramping up, and they are figuring now out what they're going to do. But other projects are sort of static mode in that. So there isn't always a strike team figuring out the next thing, but there is an idea, and a small team starts to explore that, and it will be ramping up potentially into a game project.
Okay, interesting. And I was thinking about so Remedy is located in Espoo.
Yeah.
And what is the game culture in Espoo?
I think it's Espoo and Helsinki. It's pretty much the same. It's at least from the outside, it's always the Helsinki area.
Yeah.
And it's I think there is a strong culture, gaming culture there. It's mostly focused on mobile, since Supercell and Rovio are both. Rovio is actually in Espoo and Supercell in Helsinki, for about 4 kilometers apart, and it's all very, very small. But in AAA, it's more difficult to establish the culture separately from the companies, because there are so few.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, Housemarque is now doing a AAA title for the first time, so there might be another AAA company, but other than that, Remedy's been the only AAA company in Finland.
But is there within the gaming community, I mean, all of the companies, is there a lot of interchanges in between the companies and so on?
Do you mean personal wise or information sharing?
Yeah, both.
Well, it's we have very strong IGDA chapter in Helsinki, and with monthly active gatherings. Many people go there, and it's very open. People are sharing their projects, and if you're like a listed company as Remedies, you can't obviously be as open as if you have a few people in a startup, but the culture is there and people are very helpful towards others. So if there's a company or a team that asks for help, you are very likely to get it. Also, quite small circles, so when people are changing jobs, they are usually changing into a close by company. So it's many people have worked on many companies there, and it's sort of unwritten rule is that you don't poach people from the companies, but if people are willing to, if the people themselves initiate it, then it's okay.
I was thinking about you. I watched your talk here at the game conference in Linköping earlier today, and I think you had some interesting points about opinions about bugs and how you should handle them. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes, it's once you get closer to the shipping of the either a milestone or the game itself, the more close you get, less bugs you should in general fix, because bugs will beget other bugs, and you are in this vicious circle if you try to fix them all. So at some point in a late phase of a project, you need to accept that there are bugs that you don't need to fix, and you can ship the game with those bugs.
Is that a conversation you have had with like a developer or an artist that won't agree with you?
Definitely, yes. There are. It's very difficult to, let's say, an artist, for example, who has worked on something really beautiful, but there is this one little knack in that, and when you tell him or her that you can't fix that, then it's usually not taken very lightly. But as a producer, you're always the bad cop. You need to give that. In order to ship, you need to draw the line at some point. That if that line is on someone's work, it obviously hurts. But the more senior you are, the more you understand that your work is part of the bigger thing, and you need to get it ready at some point.
Is there a risk that if you're working as a producer that people will find you annoying since you're always being the bad cop?
Definitely. Yes, that's something that comes with the job. Okay. It might not be that bad as you say, but there are definitely things that more junior developers don't understand why certain things need to happen, and you need to be the one telling them and enforcing them and trying to convince them. But if they're not convinced, it's still going to be the thing that I say. So it's you basically own the process of making the game, and you tell how it is moving forward. Bugs and all.
Can it be tough sometimes to be able to cope with having to come with the bad news?
Yeah, it's sometimes tough, as with any job where you need to tell bad news. But I think I've grown a pretty thick skin, so it's easier now than it was earlier.
I guess experience is good in that sense as well. Also,
you get validation for your own beliefs with experience, so you're more convinced that you're right. So when you're telling these things, it's easier when you know you're right.
Of course. So I have this segment in Spelskaparna, which is called... do you understand any Swedish, by the way?
A bit, yes.
A bit, okay. Mm-hmm. I'll try it in Swedish and then I'll say it in English, but it's called Spel under lupp.
Spel under lupp.
you understand?
No.
No. So it's basically a game under the magnifying glass. A game that maybe in your current position, that in some ways it seems important to you for what you're working on right now.
Yes, I think I have one Witcher 3, which is fairly recent. It's not a game that's inspired me to find a career in games or anything, but it's just so well made in so many different areas that it's something that I look every once in a while and just baffle on how did they ever pull it off, given our resources and constraints. It's actually quite amazing achievement. So
Okay.
it's inspiring me in that way. So that trying to match that.
You say it's has a lot of details and so on, but what aspects do you particularly like?
I like the story and also the way. Well, first of all, the game inspired me to read all the Witcher books that have been written. So the story was very, very important to me. But also the way they've done it so that each side quest is pretty much a complete game of its own and could ship maybe not a quite big enough than a regular AAA game, but still big enough to be considered as a game of its own. And also how they took the spirit of the books and got it so well in the context of a game. And also I was very emotional when I finished the main quest of Witcher 3, and it doesn't usually happen to me in games. So it was a huge achievement.
Huh. And why do you think that happened to you, that you got this reaction?
Yeah, I think it was just so well converted. The story that they've written was obviously a very good one. It wasn't scribbled down like sometimes you get in games that it's not a. It's sort of a
Afterthought or
yes,
something?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm searching for. So that in this game, not totally different. It's like starting from a solid story and then convert it to the game piece by piece, and like has the arc of a story that you usually get in other media like movies or books, but not so much in games yet. But that was perfectly executed. There were these little things. I remember a scene. Do I need to worry about spoilers?
No, we can say that there will come a spoiler now, so you can fast forward if you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, there is this scene where Geralt and Ciri are in this discussion. Ciri was very disappointed in one of the characters in the game, and they are in his. It's not a house; it's a cavern or of sorts. But then she wants to make a mess there because she's so disappointed. She wants to like throw things and stuff. And you get this dialogue wheel option of you can choose to encourage her or not encourage her. I don't remember exactly, but if you encourage her, the way it's been implemented in the game is not like Geralt just saying, go ahead. It's this whole cinematic where Geralt is leaning on a table, then quote unquote accidentally drops a bottle from the table, and it breaks, and then Siri notices that, and then there is this eye contact between them, and then Siri realizes that, hey, it's okay to tear this place apart, and then it unwinds from that. So it's these little subtle things that you could do with very easily by just saying, hey, tear this place apart, or you could do it the way they did it, and it adds a few layers of nuance to it, and it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's really really cool, and also to combine like a game like that with these kind of subtleties. It's like even in AAA games in general, it's not that common really. That you,
Yeah, I agree.
It's more common to use the how do you say, like the big tools?
Yes.
The big hammer.
Yes, exactly. And given that the game is huge in scope and they still do things like that all the time in the game, it's just mind-boggling.
And what is there something from this game that you can make use of in your work today as a producer on Control?
As a producer, maybe no. It's like I said, being producer is mostly saying no, but maybe it gives perspective in the whole game development, that what you can achieve, and also if a creative person says that I want to do something like this, then you might give him a benefit of a doubt that that's a huge masterpiece coming up, and you don't say no all the time, even if you're a producer.
Someone said yes to make that cinematic.
Yes, exactly. Also have to keep in mind that for every game that has failed, there has been a producer who has said that we need to ship this now, no additional features, and then they ship the game and it's not received very well. So that also gives perspective on your work.
What do you think about, like, quite recently Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, and there was this big thing about they had some kind of animation on the horses for their testicles.
Yes.
How did that end up in the game, do you think?
I think that it was originally proposed as a joke and they cut it from the list, but then they, as a company, saw possibly a marketing opportunity there to like highlight how much detail focus there is in the game. They implemented the feature so that they can highlight it in the marketing, and then it gives the impression, which I don't say it's not reality, but it at least gives the impression of that they really nailed down every little bit of detail that there is.
So in that sense, you would have let that that feature in as well?
I would have outscoped that feature as a producer from my game. If I had been a producer of Red Dead Redemption 2, I wouldn't have prioritized that feature so much that it would have ended in the game. But if there was additional pressure from the marketing, then obviously you reconsider. But gameplay point of view, a feature that's not going to be noticed by anyone, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's I agree. So I'm getting quite satisfied. Is there something that you think I've missed?
No, I think this has been really good stuff.
We've covered most of the stuff.
Yeah.
Great. And my last question is, who do you think I should interview next?
Ooh. That's a good one. From Finland.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe not from Remedy, because I have a couple of in mind, but since you've already interviewed me, you might want to interview someone else. Maybe Ilari Kuittinen from Housemark would be a good target.
Okay, and what position does he have there?
He's the CEO.
He's the CEO. Okay. Okay. Cool. Great advice, and thanks for coming to Spelskaparna.
Thank you for inviting me.